The night stretched endlessly before me as I ventured out alone, the moon casting an eerie glow over the silent streets. With each step, the shadows seemed to grow darker, swallowing the feeble pools of light cast by the occasional street lamp. The cool autumn air sent a shiver down my spine as I pulled my jacket tighter around me, the sound of my footsteps echoing in the emptiness. Despite the late hour, the city was strangely deserted, adding to the sense of isolation that weighed heavily on my shoulders. I glanced nervously over my shoulder, half expecting to see someone or something lurking in the darkness behind me. As I reached the end of the familiar path, a sense of unease settled over me like a thick fog. The usual bustling sounds of the city were replaced by an unsettling silence, broken only by the distant howl of a lonely dog. I quickened my pace, eager to escape the oppressive stillness that seemed to suffocate me with every breath. But no matter how fast I walked, the darkness seemed to stretch out endlessly before me, enveloping me in its cold embrace. Suddenly, a noise shattered the silence, causing my heart to skip a beat. I froze in place, straining my ears to listen for any sign of danger. There it was again, a soft rustling sound coming from the alley ahead. My pulse quickened as I hesitated, torn between curiosity and fear. With a shaky breath, I mustered up the courage to move forward, my footsteps echoing loudly in the narrow passageway. As I rounded the corner, a figure emerged from the shadows, sending a wave of terror coursing through me. My blood ran cold as I stared into the empty eyes of the stranger, their expression unreadable in the dim light. For a moment, we stood locked in a silent standoff, neither of us daring to make a move. But then, with a menacing grin, the stranger took a step closer, their intentions clear. Panic surged through me as I stumbled backward, my mind racing with fear. I searched desperately for an escape route, but the alley seemed to stretch on endlessly in every direction. With trembling hands, I fumbled for my phone, praying for a sliver of reception that would allow me to call for help. But as I glanced down at the screen, I realized with horror that I was completely alone, cut off from the outside world with no one to hear my cries for help. With a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach, I turned and ran, the sound of the stranger's laughter echoing in my ears as I fled into the safety of the night. As I stumbled out of the alley and into the relative safety of the main street, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped a fate far worse than I could have ever imagined. And as I made my way home, the memory of that chilling encounter lingered in the back of my mind, a constant reminder that danger lurks in the most unexpected places. As autumn wrapped around us like a cloak, as my friend and I set out for our evening stroll through the quiet streets of Colorado, the vibrant colors of fall adorned the landscape, with leaves of crimson and gold carpeting the ground beneath our feet. We walked in comfortable silence, the only sound the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional distant hoot of an owl. The sky above was a vast expanse of stars, twinkling like diamonds against the deep indigo canvas. Despite the serene beauty of the night, a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of my consciousness, a primal instinct warning me of unseen dangers lurking in the shadows. As we rounded a bend in the road, a flicker of movement caught my eye, and I tensed, my senses on high alert. There, just ahead, a figure emerged from the darkness of an alley, their silhouette barely discernible in the dim light. My friend and I exchanged wary glances, a silent communication passing between us as we instinctively drew closer together. The stranger stood motionless for a moment, their presence casting a palpable aura of tension over the scene. With a nervous swallow, I forced myself to take a step forward, my voice shaky as I called out a tentative greeting. The stranger remained silent, their intentions unclear as they took a slow, deliberate step closer. Panic began to bubble up within me, a primal instinct urging me to flee, but I held my ground, unwilling to show weakness in the face of the unknown. Just as I braced myself for the worst, a voice shattered the silence, cutting through the tension like a knife. It was a familiar voice, tinged with amusement and laced with relief. My friend and I exchanged puzzled glances before realizing with a mixture of embarrassment and relief that the figure before us was none other than a mutual acquaintance, playing a prank in the darkness of the night. Relief washed over us like a tidal wave as we laughed off our momentary fear, the tension of the encounter dissipating into the cool night air. With lightened spirits, we continued on our journey, the memory of our encounter serving as a cautionary tale of the power of fear to warp perception and ignite the imagination. As we made our way home, the stars above seemed to twinkle with newfound warmth, casting a gentle glow over our path. And though the night held its share of shadows and unseen dangers, we walked with newfound confidence, secure in the knowledge that together we could conquer even the darkest of nights. The night descended upon Hawaii, enveloping the island in an otherworldly stillness as I embarked on the journey to my grandmother's house. The lush jungle loomed around me, its verdant foliage casting eerie shadows that danced in the moonlight. Each step along the winding path felt like a cautious venture into the unknown, my senses heightened by the subtle rustle of leaves and the distant calls of nocturnal creatures. Despite the familiarity of the surroundings, a palpable sense of unease settled over me, like a cold hand gripping my heart. The air was thick with the scent of tropical blooms, their heady perfume mingling with the salty tang of the nearby ocean. It was a scent that should have brought comfort, but instead, it only served to heighten my apprehension. Perhaps it was the looming darkness that seemed to swallow the world whole, or the unsettling silence that hung in the air like a heavy shroud. Whatever the cause, a knot of fear twisted in my stomach, urging me to turn back. But I pressed on, driven by the memory of my grandmother's warm embrace and the promise of safety that awaited me at her humble abode. With each step, the jungle seemed to grow denser, the tangled undergrowth clawing at my clothes as if to hold me back. Shadows danced along the forest floor, their shapes shifting and morphing with each passing moment, playing tricks on my weary mind. As I ventured deeper into the heart of the jungle, the familiar landmarks faded into obscurity, swallowed up by the darkness. Panic threatened to overwhelm me as I realized I had lost my way, the path ahead obscured by a thick curtain of foliage. My heart hammered in my chest as I struggled to keep my bearings, the fear clawing at the edges of my consciousness. Just when I feared I could go no further, a faint glimmer of light pierced the darkness ahead, beckoning me like a guiding star. With renewed determination, I pushed forward, my footsteps echoing in the stillness of the night. As I emerged into a small clearing bathed in moonlight, relief flooded through me like a tidal wave. And there, standing before me, was my grandmother's cottage, its warm glow a beacon of hope in the sea of darkness. With trembling hands, I approached the door and knocked, my heart pounding in my chest. Moments later, the door swung open, revealing my grandmother's smiling face. Relief washed over me as she enveloped me in a warm embrace, her presence a comforting balm to my frayed nerves. As we sat together in the cozy warmth of her cottage, sipping tea and sharing stories, I couldn't help but marvel at the contrast between the ominous jungle and the safety of her home. And though the memory of my harrowing journey would linger in the back of my mind, I knew that with my grandmother by my side, I would always find my way back to safety.